You're listening to the best local sports show. Boots, Bats and Balls on Six Towns Radio.
Hello, I'm Ross Hancock, and here today on Six Towns Radio, we've got a very special guest joining us all the way from Orlando in Florida. This man played a huge part in both the Autoglass Trophy victory in 2000 and the journey back to Division 1 in 2002, making over 200 appearances for the club in the 7-year stay in the Potteries. He'll be fondly remembered by Stoke fans as the tough tackling centre midfielder whose tenacity and determination proved vital, and despite not being a Stokey as such, he suitably wrote his name into Stoke City folklore thanks to one incredible night at Ninian Park, becoming an adopted Stokey in the process. He is, of course, Orlando City midfielder, Mr. James O'Connor.
Hi guys, thanks very much for having me on.
That's excellent. And James, with the time difference, I'll start by saying good morning. Thanks for joining us. Is 9 o'clock an early start for you, or is this a sort of normal time for you?
Yeah, no. I mean, I've 2 young children now, so 9 o'clock is nearly lunchtime. I think when the kids come along, you're up well before 9. You know?
I'll tell you, I want to start, if I can, by talking about that game in Cardiff that I've just mentioned, because obviously that is one of the biggest nights in Stoke City's history, and you were a huge part of it, scoring the 90th minute equaliser, and then of course scoring the free kick, which deflected in stoppage time. I spoke to your teammate Neil Cutler a few weeks ago, and he said that the game felt like you'd already been promoted because of the atmosphere and the occasion. What can you remember from that game?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that night will be something that I will never forget. We worked really hard for a couple of years to try to get promoted, and there's a big rivalry with Cardiff and Stoke, so it was an interesting game. The home leg we unfortunately ended up losing, so we quite a bit of work to do to get back into things. But we went there quite confident that we'd be able to do it. And I think at the end, how the game actually worked out for us, I think we all felt that we were definitely going to go on and get promoted. I think after the way the game ended, I just think that atmosphere, the camaraderie, the spirit, and then we were showing clips of what had happened back at the Britannia where people had watched us and the scenes back at the Britannia. I just felt as if we were always going to get promoted after that,
And it's actually quite a coincidence because it's Souleymane Oulare's birthday today, and it was his backside that the ball went in off. I'm sure you're going to say that it was your goal, though, aren't you?
Well, yeah. And even now, I think the most important thing was just that we scored and we won the game. I mean, it was so important that we did actually win and get out of that division, because we as I say, we had a couple of years where we were in the playoffs and we'd been unfortunate. So it was so pleasing to get to the final and give everyone a great occasion, because the final itself ended up being incredible and phenomenal atmosphere. And it was at the Millennium Stadium where we'd over 30,000 Stoke supporters. So it was a great occasion.
It was a great day. And the iconic image I've got of the night in Ninian Park is after the second goal went in, the camera pans to your face and you just don't know what to do with yourself. And then the camera pans to all the Stoke fans going mental in the away end. And I just want to say, actually, thanks for that moment, James, because, if we hadn't got out that division, who knows where we might be today. We might not even be in the Premier League. Well,
no, it was, as I say, it was something that, I'll never forget. It's probably one of the highlights of my career, because it meant so much to me and to all the players and to all the supporters. So it was a great time.
And you did enjoy some other pretty great moments at Stoke as well, winning the Autoglass Trophy, promotion to Division 1, of course, and then surviving relegation. What would you say your best memories from Stoke then?
I think the best memories were obviously that night in Cardiff. I think my first season where we did win the Autoglass, and we ended up, I think, in the playoffs as well, but just didn't quite get over the line. And staying up was a real achievement as well, because it was actually Tony who took over in November, Tony Pulis, and he did a great job to keep us up, because he didn't really have a whole lot to work with as regards budget. And if people remember, it was when the Icelandic folk were in town, and at the time they put a little bit of money into it, but I felt they could have maybe done a little bit more, and we were constantly fighting to stay in the league, and Tony did a good job to keep us up, and that went to the last day. It was a bit of a nail biter as well. I remember Eddie scored and with Reading at home that last game, so it went to the end as well that day.
And you've mentioned it then, the Icelandic owners, because there's quite a lot of talk in England at the moment about homegrown talent, and there's a lot of foreigners in the country playing football in the Premier League and whatnot. And like you say, whilst at Stoke, there was the Icelandic owners, and there's also a lot of Icelandic players as well. As a player, was it quite weird to have so many players of one nation in the team, or did it make no difference?
Yeah, I mean, it didn't really make a big difference. I mean, I think in fairness to the Icelandic boys, they settled in quite well, and they weren't a clique. They were quite friendly amongst the team, and we had a decent amount of spirit. I just think that when you look at the way it's going now, it's becoming such a big business. It's becoming harder and harder for teams to be able to develop young players and give them an opportunity, because managers are under pressure to get results, and I think a manager who's under pressure is always going to tend to go with experience. And I just think it's the value of players within England, I think, is higher than it is overseas. So a lot of them then think, well, I'll go and I'll spend some money overseas rather than look to spend it at home. But I think, it's really positive that they've made some inroads into at least talking about making some changes, because I think there's definitely change needs to happen.
And so let's go on to your current career, because you moved to Orlando City. It's not your usual transfer because, in England, a couple of 100 miles down the road or whatnot, but you moved to a different continent. Was it quite a difficult decision to make? Obviously, your family, have they been quite supportive of the move?
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the biggest reasons of coming. I think it was, Adrian Heath, our manager, obviously, that played a big factor as well, and Phil Rawlins. So, I mean, I think if you are going to change continent, you need to know sort of people where you're going. So, I think having looked at possibly moving abroad, I think that was one of the key factors, was that I needed to go somewhere where I felt I knew the people and I could trust them. And I know Adrian Heath's philosophy on football, and I came up and I'd watched him train, and I was really impressed. And I know Phil, obviously, from my time at Stoke, and just good people. So, I mean, that was what was important for me, that if I was going to uproot and bring the family to a different continent, it needed to be to a place where I knew I could trust the people that were in charge of the club.
And it's not just a huge move because of the distance, because the climate as well is completely different in Orlando. And I don't know if you want me to talk about this, but I want to talk about the hat and the long sleeve shirts that you've been made to wear. Could you tell us what the story behind that is?
Yeah, I mean, basically, the heat in Orlando is incredible. I mean, the summer gets really, really hot. So when we arrived, we actually went and saw a dermatologist, and he had said to me, because of my skin, that I would need to cover up because of the danger of the sun. So I have a hat that basically covers my ears and my neck, and obviously it has a cap on top, and then I have sleeves basically that cover my arms from my shoulder down to the end of my wrist, and then I have long socks that come up to just under my knees. So there's not too much shown to me when I actually train. I get a fair bit of stick off the lads for it, but again, I need to be sensible and listen to what the people are telling me. So.
And like you mentioned, Adrian Heath was quite a big factor in your signing. He signed you because of your experience, and you're now an assistant coach at Orlando. Have you found that you've been able to offer quite good advice to the younger players at the club? Are you looking forward to being involved as an assistant coach and a player this season?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, that's something I've always sort of wanted to go down the road of. I mean, I've done all my coaching licenses, and sort of, as I've been playing, I've always been keeping a keen eye on making sure I've been coming through the system and gaining my coaching badges, because once my career does finish, I would like to go into coaching and management. And as I say, I've been lucky that the manager's given me an opportunity now to be an assistant coach here. So I'm really looking forward to it. I mean, I think the type of person I am, I'm always trying to help people and try and encourage younger players, and that's something I'm looking forward to doing even more now.
Obviously, you just mentioned there coaching the younger players, because you've also got an organisation called Premier Soccer Stars. How can listeners in Orlando get involved in the camps? Because I want you to talk a little bit about that, if you could.
Yeah, I mean, basically, one of the things I'm keen to try and do as well is to give back a little bit. I've been very fortunate to have had a professional soccer career, and I think as you get older, you look back and you think, okay, well, there was a lot of people that tried to help me out. So basically, I've set a company up where we go and we run soccer camps within Orlando, and where we'll provide different types of training to try and help kids improve at soccer. And it's something that, you know, I'm keen to develop, and we've sort of worked for the Orlando City now. We've taken on their camp program, so we've structured things in a way where we have kids coming in through different parts of the year, and we're working on different aspects of their game and trying to teach them and teach best practice and show them some of the skills that will hopefully be able to improve them and make them better players.
I'm not sure too many people know in the UK how the MLS system works in America, because Orlando City are trying to apply to be in the MLS. The stadium funds need to be granted before the stadium can be built, and it's the final few days now, just under a week to go. Are you confident that the club will be playing in the MLS?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, I think the presentation that the club have developed, I think, you know, shows the economic impact it can have on the city of Orlando and the county. I think if you look at where the stadium is proposed to be located, I think in the middle of downtown, I think it will create a buzz for all the supporters. I think we would definitely get, you know, big crowds, and with big crowds comes room rights, which basically a lot of the city and the county commissioners are interested in, because that then generates revenue for them. So I think the proposal is very, very good, and, you know, we just hopefully next Tuesday the meeting will go well for us, and I think that's the final nail really. If we can get that, then I think basically we'd be an MLS team. I think the MLS have more or less said that, you know, once they can provide some type of stadium plan, they would give them the license. So hopefully Tuesday will be a historic day for Orlando.
Hopefully, yeah. And back in England, talked about Stoke. You played for a few teams, obviously Burnley, Sheffield Wednesday, and West Brom, who we're going to get onto in a moment. I just want to talk about a pretty special goal, actually, that you scored for Burnley. I remember watching it on the TV. It was against Preston in the derby at Turf Moor. I think you scored the opening goal and it finished 3-2. Have you got any good memories from your time at Burnley?
Yeah, I mean, Burnley was a lovely time, and we had some great games up there, some great rivalry. You know, up in Lancashire. I mean, against Preston again, that was a big night for us. We ended up winning. I think Andy Gray scored late on to make it 3-2. But yeah, I mean, I had great memories in Burnley. Again, we had some really good players. We had some, I would say, a really good team spirit, and yeah, it was an enjoyable time at Burnley. I enjoyed my time there as well.
And we'll go into your time at West Brom now, because it's the club you joined after you left Stoke. Was it a move that you wanted to make, or would you prefer to stay at Stoke? Was it quite a difficult decision?
Yeah, it was a very difficult decision. I think the problem, you know, for me at the time was the club hadn't actually offered me a contract. You know, and I remember sitting with Tony, and we'd sort of discussed it, and he'd said that, you know, they would be offering me a contract, and the contract didn't actually come till June. And then when the contract did come, it was a pay cut. So I mean, the club were made pretty clear to me that they wanted to cash in, because they thought that I'd go to a tribunal and I'd be able to get a lot of money at the tribunal. And again, I think if you look at the ownership group at the time, they were the Icelandics, and, you know, I got on great and still get on great with Tony. And I think he had said that he wanted to have kept me, and, you know, he was disappointed with the offer that they had made. So I think it was a case really where, you know, when I saw how the contract had been structured, the timing of the contract, the fact that they were actually offering me a pay cut, indicated to me that they didn't really want to keep me. They were more happy to let me go and cash in on me. They'd had, I think, a couple of big offers previously from West Brom, and I think they thought that if it went to a tribunal that they would get something similar. You know, it's something that I look back on again. It's you live and learn, and, you know, I think the way it was portrayed within Stoke was that, you know, I had left, and, you know, people didn't really fully understand the situation, and probably people still aren't aware of what actually happened. You know, so it became a difficult time for me, to be honest.
Yeah, and you didn't make too many appearances for West Brom, not as much as perhaps you could have hoped to. But on the whole, did you enjoy your time at Hawthorns? Yeah,
I mean, again, we started well. I mean, we ended up getting promoted that first season that I was there. I started in the team, and then I fell out of the team at Christmas. So it was a case then that from Christmas on it became quite difficult, because the team were doing well. I mean, We were always, I think, first or second. And it was a case then of trying to get back into the team. We ended up getting promoted, and once we got promoted to the Premier League, then it changed. We saw some big players coming in. We signed Kanu, and we signed some pretty high-profile players. So I think once that happened, it became difficult for me to get into the team. I mean, I had a good pre-season, and was in the squad and was on the periphery of things. But then even then, I always wanted to play. So it was a case then when I realised that I maybe wasn't going to play, that I was going to be sub or part of the squad, and sat down with Gary Mason and just had a chat to him and said, look, I'd like to go and play some games. And Gary was brilliant. I mean, he said, look, I fully get it. And probably have a very similar mindset where, you don't necessarily just want to be sitting watching games. You want to go and play. So he fully understood the situation, and that was when I went on loan to Burnley, and was able to go and have some games there.
I'm not sure if you keep up to date with Premier League football over in the United States, but this weekend, West Brom, we've just been talking about, take on Stoke at Britannia Stadium. So, without wanting to make you feel too uncomfortable, I'd like a prediction, please. So, what's the score going to be?
Well, it's funny because when you look at Stoke's record against West Brom, Stoke have an incredible record against West Brom. Stoke normally always beat West Brom, for whatever reason. I remember smiling with Clive Clarke, because I was obviously at West Brom when we were getting ready to play Stoke, and we were laughing at the record, because at that time I had no indication of Stoke's record against West Brom, and it's something that I still smile at now, because more often than not Stoke end up beating West Brom for whatever reason. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see what happens this weekend. I know there's been some changes there, but we actually get to see a load of Premier League football here, so it may even be on this weekend. So if it is, I should be watching it with a lot of interest.
Have you got a prediction?
I will say Stoke will end up winning 1-0.
Excellent. That suits me.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Clarke then, Clive Clarke. Is he your agent, isn't he, with Beswicks?
Yeah, I mean, sort of Beswicks, I've been with Beswicks for years now. There's Gary Miller, Clive Clarke, Darren Long, there's really, really good guys, and I think there's been a couple more additions as well, to the Beswicks staff. You've got Tim as well. I mean, they're all really good guys, Tim Bailey, and the biggest thing I like about them is they're very genuine and very honest, and they'll always do the best thing for the player. And Gary and Clive, obviously I'd come over with as a 16-year-old, and he's always been one of my close friends, and Gary has become one of my close friends as well, because we've got on really well. And I think I have great admiration for the way Beswicks and Gary structure things and go about their work, because they put the player first at all times. And if there's any inspiring young players out there, I would definitely recommend using Beswicks, because they're really good people.
And I tell you, we'll end on a positive note as well, because I want to talk about football, or soccer in the United States. Would you recommend that players maybe come towards the end of their career, move to America? What makes it such an attractive prospect? I
think the growth in the sport here is really, really sort of developing. I mean, I think if you look at how the US men's team has done, I mean, they've qualified again for the World Cup, how the league is structuring itself, I think there's lots of opportunity out here. The passion is really starting to develop, and when we had just under 21,000 for the final championship game. So I mean, I think a lot of players. I mean, as you get older, you start to have different responsibilities. I mean, I have obviously 2 young children, so you need to do what's right for your family as well. But I just think when you look at the way the game is developing, the way life here is so family orientated as well. I just think it's something that a lot of players should consider.
Big thanks to you, James, because I've got to say, you're actually one of my heroes growing up. So I hope I'm not being too nervous with you. But I just want to say a huge good luck for this season and for the big vote as well. Because, like you've mentioned, somewhere as big as Orlando, it deserves an MLS side, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, I think especially if you look at the work that's been done, and I think once we get into the MLS, there's big plans to make it a big soccer club or football club, as we call it. So I'm really looking forward to it.